Hey, RetconRaider here, and welcome back to Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. As today, Sargona is a Sargoner. And you know, we'll have to learn to live with the consequences of our heartless actions. The loot, the XP, the new companion, new dog, plus a round of level ups. It'll take some time, but, you know, I think we'll get through this. On a more serious note, let's run through these level ups real quick. And they are, in fact, exceedingly simple this time out, with just a characteristic and a skill bump, which is, I will note, our second to last of each. So at this point, we're really just kind of evening things out, at least characteristic-wise. Val, for example, will be pushing Perception with both bumps. We want to hit that 100-point threshold so he gains that permanent +1 AP. And then for skills, Val, like most of our other guys, will just grab Medicae. It's one of the few skills with an actual secondary function, so it was either that or Demo. After that, we've got Abby. He's already capped on Toughness and Weapon Skill, his two primaries, so we'll just start gunning it on Strength. That'll push it over that 120 threshold with his final bump. And then skill-wise, again, already capped in his primaries, so once again, much like Val, Medicae. Cassia, already capped on Will and Fellowship, so at this point, we're really just rounding out the rest of her mental stats. We'll bump Perception to 110, and then her final bump will go towards Int. That'll have some small influence on her grand strat stuff. As for skills, still just kind of trying to even out the 5 different things she's technically covering. Commerce this time out, not sure where the last will go. Pascal, and you know, his build is just kind of all over the place. The only stat he's got capped is Intelligence, which was the single one that was kind of non-negotiable. But given that we have been kind of leaning him more into Plasma lately, I think we'll double down on Perception. That also has some interplay with his operative stuff. And then for skills, once again, Medicae. Which brings us to Solomorn, who we actually have to make some slight adjustments on, because while he did actually perform pretty decently during that final fight, as per the latest Raider poll, he has been elected as our new party regular over Ulfar. And so if we want him to be able to use that Secrets of the Forerunner, we need to make sure at least one of his stats ends up over 100. And he's only 5 points short on ballistic skill, so I am going to have to go back and do a very light respec on him. Again, pretty happy with where all his stuff ended up, but I might just change one of these characteristic bumps. You know, we need it sooner rather than later to get over that 100-point threshold so he can get +10 to all his other stats. And then as far as skills go, much more straightforward. We need to cap him on awareness. And then Ulfar. Honestly, we're really just evening things out here. We'll go ahead and put his second to last bump into not Perception. Agility. Rounding that out to 80, and then his final will go somewhere else. Probably Ballistics. And for skills, Medicae. There we go. Level up's complete. Minus Cabela, who I'll take care of off screen, but, I mean, I think she's just Agility plus Demo. That said, let's head on back. We've got a lot of talking to get through. Let's get ourselves debriefed, and then get ourselves debriefed. Congratulations on the mission completion, Rogue Trader. On behalf of the Adeptus Arbite, I extend my thanks for your cooperation. On a separate note, I am grateful for your fire support as my squad advanced on the lower deck. Your marksmanship, timing, Your shots on the fuel pipes gave us a significant advantage. Hey, happy to help, but you and Glado weren't too shabby yourselves. Honestly, you and me, we might just be holding Glado back. I'm pretty sure he could have cleared that whole ship himself. I doubt it. Cybermastiffs require commands. Either way, the Heartless is now yours, as agreed. Your Lordship, if you would permit me to interrupt. I am pleased to inform you that the boarding team has presented a most extraordinary gift to your dynasty. The heretics were keeping something of rare value in their hold. Our engine seers have completed all the necessary rituals of cleansing. This trophy is now all yours. Stygian Pattern Dual Module Macro Batteries. Short-range broadside macro cannons with autonomous aiming modules. Fires 2 shots, dealing 21 damage per shot. Can be used twice per turn. Okay, so really low damage, but 2 volleys per battery per turn. Not terrible, but sadly, I think still a step down. And Fireproof Ceramite Plating. Negates 5 damage on each side, reduces damage from internal fires by half. Again, not terrible, though I will have to compare it with what we've got. I'll put a pin in that for later. We also discovered a large supply of provisions, weapons, and Xena. The high factotum catches himself, having seemingly just remembered Solomorn's presence. And other assorted valuables, which will be loaded into the flagship's holds with extreme assiduity. Uh-huh. Good catch, Danrock. Very subtle. I'm sure he doesn't suspect a thing. The ship itself is a most impressive acquisition for the Dynasty also. All it requires is some light repair work. Janris rubs his hands together in anticipation. What would you have us do with it? You could present it to our trading partners. I am confident that they would put it to good use. Alternatively, we could transfer some of your subjects to the Heartless and use it to increase trade between your own worlds. A profitable option, to be sure. Ooh. Okay, well, not that. I'm not going to trash the ship for a meager 1,000 scrap. Repairing it would cost 5 profit factor. And sending it to a trading partner, I assume that would be Rep? I do wish it told me how much. I'd like to make a more informed decision, but I also don't want to spoil myself by just looking it up. Go ahead and get this thing repaired. I feel it's best put to use in-house. Certainly. And what use did you have in mind for the ship afterward? Oh, I can actually use it in battle. That's fun. What do we get if we use it to patrol our trade routes? It doesn't actually tell us. Okay, well, I'm assuming it's something good. Possibly a protectorate-wide bonus of some sort, or future opportunities. Oh, man. It would be fun to have another ship in battle, but also at the same time, we're so late in the game. How often would that really come up? I feel like Val would prefer to use it to protect his long-term interests. He's more than capable of taking care of himself, relatively speaking. We'll add it to the trading fleet. Something to give potential pirates pause. It shall be done. Getting the ship operational will take some time. I will inform you as soon as the Heartless is ready to serve the Dynasty. I'll have to poke around a bit, see if I can figure out what that actually does, now that we've locked it in. Well, now that all financial matters have been resolved, allow me to graciously take my leave. The valuables must all be meticulously inventoried. The factotum offers you a deep bow, glancing sideways at Solomorn, who seems to be in no hurry to leave. The arbitrator and his dog both watch as Janris leaves, then turn to you. There is one more thing, Rogue Trader. Your performance aboard the Heartless was highly appreciated. As an additional token of gratitude from the Adeptus Arbitae, I will be joining your personal security detail, at least until we arrive on Dargonis to meet with the Marshal. He has business to discuss with you, and I have a mountain of reports to write up about this operation. Yeah, I hear that. There's no way you could perpetrate that amount of carnage and mayhem and not incur a considerable amount of paperwork. You know, all pretenses aside, I do appreciate the irony that once upon a time, in my past life, I would have done everything I could to avoid the attentions of someone like you. And yet here I find myself welcoming you into my retinue. The Sacred Warren has wiped your slate clean. Now you have been summoned to serve the Emperor, and I'll be damned to the void if I ever once rebuke you for your past deeds. Solo, buddy. Gotta say, I once again find myself admiring your pragmatic attitude. Well said. And as a duly recognized servant of the Emperor, I would be remiss not to assist the Adeptus with any reasonable requests they might have. I'll get you back to Dargonis as soon as circumstances allow. I hope those circumstances arrive soon. The longer our journey, the more criminals are left wandering about without my supervision. Solomorn nods at you, gives a quick salute, and leaves with Glado at his heel. Hey, Cece. How you doing, girl? Alright, so what did our new ship actually do? I'm not seeing any new contracts. No new quest pop-ups. Nothing immediately obvious on our profit factor. Alright, well, I'll dig into that later. For now, let's go chat up Solomorn. Give me a sec to track him down.
Greetings, Rogue Trader. I would like to report that Glato and I have finished our initial inspection of the upper decks. The list of infractions ended up being 5 pages shorter than expected. I'm beginning to worry that a servant of the Lex might have little to occupy himself with aboard your ship.
Solomorn stands with both his thumbs in his belt, looking around the bridge with assertive confidence. He gives you a casual nod as you approach. Yeah, I don't know about that, Solo. If you'd been here a month ago, well, let's just say enjoy the downtime while you can. It's good to see you at ease.
I doubt such a word could ever be accurately used to describe an arbitrator, but there is some truth to your observation. Since we're not in combat, I permit myself to stand at ease, which is to say, I'm standing by on full alert.
Arbitrator. Yeah, you and me both. Like I said, things do get a bit wild here from time to time, but hopefully we can have a nice, normal conversation nonetheless.
A rogue trader and an arbitrator. You have an interesting notion of normality. Well, I'll try not to disappoint you with my conversation skills.
Solomorn raises an eyebrow. Oh, I think he'll do just fine. We'll start with something easy. Why don't you tell me a bit about the Adeptus Arbitus? Obviously, I encountered them from time to time back in the day, but under very different circumstances. I'd love to hear your take.
We are servants of the God Emperor's law, made manifest in the Lex Imperialis. The Adeptus Arbates uphold order on the scale of the Imperium and bring merciless punishment to offenders.
Arbates. So aside from tithes, what are your areas of focus?
The most significant ones. Beyond the Expanse, the Arbates not only enforce tithe collection, but also ensure that every planet obeys his law and that the Imperium's authority remains unchallenged. Corrupt governors, crime syndicates, rebels. Not a minute goes by without some parasite trying to take a bite out of the Imperium. We destroy any who dare trespass against the law.
Sounds like you might have come in handy back on Janus, though, am I correct in assuming, though, that that means that were you to, say, walk past a random person being murdered, you just look the other way?
Unless said man's innocence has been previously established, such as during an investigation. In any other scenario, murder is just a common disturbance. My intervention is only required in the case of an attack on an administratum functionary or some other important figure. Then, I must take measures. However, if I have an assignment to carry out, I will ignore any distracting factors. The duties of the Arbates are above everyday crime. We collect the tithe that feeds the military might of the Imperium and sustains its authority over many worlds. To be bogged down in trivialities is to commit a criminal waste of time and resources that have been granted to us to serve the absolute of the law.
Okay, but what about psychers and servants of the archenemy? It feels like you might have some overlap with the Inquisition there.
Those are indeed the greatest threat to the Imperium, and I never leave a heretic I meet without a bullet lodged inside him. But such matters are primarily handled by other forces, which are influential enough so as not to be mentioned out loud without a reason.
Okay, fair. Moving on.
I am at your disposal.
You are indeed. Since we're on the subject, exactly how far does the Inquisition's jurisdiction extend? I was actually kind of under the impression that you only operated on hive worlds.
Quite far, which comes as an unwelcome surprise to many in the Expanse. The Arbates passed the sentence and carried it out summarily. Only the highest echelons of Terra and servants of the Inquisition and rogue traders here in the Expanse can expect the privilege of a trial. Planetary governors, nobility, clergy, to an arbitrator, they are all equal before the law.
Right, and you effectively are the law. But the Lex Imperialis, as with many aspects of the Imperium, it's grown rather bloated over time. How do you keep it all straight?
Testing me, are you? That is fine by me. The Lex Imperialis is both the code of law and the word of the God Emperor himself. For millennia, his decrees have been amassed and preserved on Holy Terra, in the Hall of Judgment, alongside the High Lord's orders. It is at once a titanic collection of edicts and a holy text.
Solomorn's tone is profound, even solemn. But every world also has its own individual set of laws, correct? Sometimes more than one.
It does. Your capital world operates under the Lex Dargonus, formed over many generations of the Von Valancius line. However, the Lex Imperialis is the final word in every debate. It stands above any legal directives a planet may have, for it comes from the Emperor himself.
Sure, but it sounds like the Lex Imperialis is largely built on a series of disparate orders and decrees. How do you know what might take precedence?
It would take longer than a lifetime to read through even a fraction of his law. But there are fundamental, integral prescripts that every arbitrator knows verbatim. These are the Injuncta Cardinal, inscribed on the walls of the Arbates precinct fortresses and etched into our ammo casings. We quote them as the indisputable truth and recite them like psalms as we charge into battle.
I've got to say, Solo, you almost make it sound like you're yet another flavor of Imperial cult.
As it should. The codes of the Lex Imperialis are my prayer, and I believe that every arbitrator's service is sacred, for it brings this imperfect reality closer to that inscribed in the Book of Judgment, closer to the God Emperor's will.
Understood.
I'm listening.
So, just out of curiosity, what exactly brought the Adeptus Arbitis all the way out here? It doesn't get much more lawless than the Expanse.
To collect and guard the tithe. That does not mean we ignore other violations of the Lex Imperialis. We simply act within the scope of our limited resources, the first of which being our small numbers. Here in the Expanse, many believe themselves to be too far from the civilized parts of the Imperium to have need of the law. The presence of the Adeptus Arbites helps to remind those people that the Lex Imperialis is in effect wherever there is at least one human being.
Okay, fair enough. Solomorn nods, faintly. How about you, personally? Do you mind if I ask some questions about the newest member of my retinue?
You prefer to have a better understanding of the people you travel with. That makes sense. Ask.
Solomorn gives you a long, studying look. Yes, that, exactly. We'll start off simple. Where are you from?
Port Wander in Calixis. The gateway to the Expanse, a monumental station, always covered in ships and bursting at the seams from all the dealers, pilgrims, mercenaries, and criminals. Compared to Port Wander, Footfall is just a lifeless rock in the void.
Ooh, Port Wander. That's the same station our gene stealers came from. Though, granted, hundreds or thousands of years ago, so probably before Solomorn's time. Honestly, probably just coincidence, but my brain does try to innately draw narrative connections. It is interesting they name-dropped it in both DLC, though. And after Port Wander, you mentioned you were stationed on Dargonis? My capital world?
On Dargonis, Lady Theodora gave the top level of one of the spires over to the Arbites. A noble house used to occupy it, before it decided to stick its hand into the dynasty's coffers. By offering us such prominent lodgings, your predecessor both reinforced her ties to the Arbites and made an unambiguous gesture toward the nobility. She was a shrewd woman and unforgiving.
Yeah, that she was. So what are your thoughts on Dargonis? You know, I've never actually gotten a chance to spend much time there myself.
I must admit, I was pleasantly surprised. I'd expected something far less civilized, given that the Coronis Expanse is on the outskirts of the Imperium. Instead, Dargonis may even compare to some Calixian worlds in status and stability.
Well, I will take that as a compliment. So how about before Dargonis, before Port Wander? How did it all begin? Were you born into the service, so to speak, or something else?
How? The short answer is the Schola Progenium. But I doubt you'd be satisfied with that. My father was an arbitrator, a good one, or else they wouldn't have found him in an alley filled with bullet holes. Someone who served with my father told me he was shot with 10 different weapons, and that he took at least 4 of the bastards down with him.
Solomorn smiles grimly.
I was sent to the Schola Progenium right after that, and the mentors there forged me into an arbitrator. I was an eager student, thanks to the example of unyielding duty and dignity my father set for me. The only thing I didn't need to borrow from him was hate. He didn't instill that. he was always with me. I never doubted that criminal vermin deserve only execution, but it was my father's death that truly crystallized my hatred, made it complete.
Solomorn's gaze is completely emotionless. Your father, did you ever get closure on his murder?
No, I didn't want to. There was a time when I wasn't sure what to think of my father's death. Or rather, I tried not to think at all. I didn't look into the case, or for any other reason, to go back to Port Wanda. Arbitrators are never assigned to their homeworlds anyway. But when I was leaving Calixis, our ship spent several days docked at the station, and so I permitted myself to go to the spot where my father was killed. I stood there for a while, and nothing. I knew that another arbitrator would have already seen the investigation through. I had nothing left to do there.
Solomorn's eyes stop on you. You mentioned being filled with hatred. But we're not born hating. It's learned over time. If you didn't get it from your father, then who?
It's possible. He didn't speak much. Sometimes we went days without saying a word to each other. The only time he was talkative was when he was going through his cases at night. He would inform me in terse and simple words who had sold out and why, what depravities the heretics from the lower hive levels had committed, what base motives the workers had had for hanging their foremen. All I did was listen, watch, and think. That was enough.
I don't know, that sounds like a pretty good recipe for resentment. What about your mother? I notice you haven't said anything about her.
From what my father told me, she was a principled woman of poor health. She died in childbirth. Not having known her might be the sole regret of my life.
The solo regret. A solo point of mourning. Also, you know there's going to be a twist there. She's either not dead or died under questionable circumstances. So based on what you're telling me, it really does sound like you were kind of born into the role.
Born? I don't believe in predetermination, but I know that every man's destiny is to serve the Imperium. In my case, the Imperium deemed me worthy of an Arbiti's rank, a heavy shotgun, and Glato. Not sure what else there is to wish for.
Hey, don't knock predestination. I had some doubts too, but I've kind of come around a bit on that as of late. So what exactly brought you out to the Expanse? It sounds like your whole life was back on Port Wander.
You should ask the Marshal. I got my assignment, and that is all I know. I assume it's due to my experience. Collecting tithes from worlds bordering on savagery, and where people haven't seen a living arbitrator in 3 generations, is a task best left to a veteran.
Ah, feudal worlds. You didn't mention that. Yeah, we haven't actually seen much in the way of feudal worlds. I mean, that's supposed to be relatively commonplace in the Imperium. I guess you could argue that's what Janus was, and we just never really strayed much beyond the governor's palace and some random Aldari ruins. You're sure you weren't sent out here as some form of punishment? Like I said, doesn't get much more lawless than the Expanse.
This isn't banishment. Otherwise, the same would apply to the Marshal and all other arbitrators in the Coronis Expanse. We are here because the Imperium needs its tithe, and that's all there is to it.
Well, tell me this. What kind of assignments did you handle back on Port Wander that could possibly have prepared you for life out here?
I suppose I have what you would call a proven and diverse track record, Investigations, rebel suppressions, punitive raids, dozens of completed operations.
Solomorn concludes dryly, without any hint of pride. I mean, surely there must be some highlights. Why don't you tell me about what you would say was your most dangerous case? I mean, you were pretty impressive back on the Heartless. I'm just trying to kind of set a baseline here.
There was this one time. I was part of a raid on a gang of mutants. I excelled in battle, received an award, and was promoted to Proctor. That is all.
Solomorn pauses expectantly. Solo, buddy, if we're going to have a working relationship, I think there's something you need to understand about me, and that is, I thrive on details. I need as many data points as I can get. Could you please provide some?
Very well. Have you ever been eaten alive? I have.
Holy moly. Solo, buddy, you just, went from 2 to 1,000 in 2 sentences. He raises his metal hand and slowly clenches it into a fist.
That raid I mentioned was compromised. The enemy had been tipped off to our operation, and we had walked into a trap. Some mutants decided to chew my arm off. That was a mistake. Since I couldn't free myself, I pushed my hand down his throat, grabbed something inside, and used him as a shield. While the thing was gnawing on my bones and spraying me with ichor and my own blood, I opened fire on the rest of the scum. That little maneuver bought my unit a few critical seconds.
Okay, now that's what I'm talking about. An actual, factual, improvised body shield. Guess I'm lucky we ended up on the same side.
Fortune has little to do with it. You have formed an alliance with the Arbates, just as your predecessor did. My presence here is only the expected result of your decisions.
Fair enough. Moving on.
I am listening.
Well, now I know more about you, but I noticed someone was distinctly absent from all your stories. What about your Durasteel doggo here?
You hear that, Glato? The rogue trader himself is asking about you.
Solomorn's stony expression becomes slightly more animated. So not just tactical support, but emotional support as well. So his name is Glato. Any particular reason, or?
His serial number is GL80. Glato is easier to say in Gothic. Many give their cybermastiffs striking names like Slayer or Thunder. I'm fine with Glato.
You know what? Good on you. Slayers and Thunders are a dime a dozen. Glato is at least a proper name. No offense to all the Thunder Slayers out there. I'm sure you're great too. You know, this is my first time actually seeing a cybermastiff close up. What exactly can he do?
He mostly provides combat support. He is trained in both lethal and non-lethal ways of disabling a target, with the ability to analyze a situation and then decide on a course of action. Glato is a good tracker too, and he can spot basic evidence. He also knows over 100 commands. In general, he is more resourceful and diligent than most people I've met.
Solomorn looks pensively at the cybermastiff sitting at attention. And the extensive augmetics?
Glato, ready! The frame is mostly metal, with armored plates covering the vital segments. The jaw is reinforced. Crunching a leg off is like tearing a hair out for him.
The cybermastiff stands up upon command, and Solomorn starts pointing out the different parts of the dog's body. He turns Glato's head to give you a better view of the fangs, as if their terrifying size were not apparent to the naked eye.
I don't even know a tenth of all the things Glato is fitted with, but it's an impressive list to be sure. Take the sensors in his nose for one. A cybermastiff is like an odor analysis laboratory. Alright, that's that. Glato, attention.
He ruffles the dog's hair, then pats Glato on the back. Yeah, I mean, that's about as blatant as it gets. A definite support animal to help him deal with whatever he's trying to repress. So what else can he do? What kind of tricks or commands?
They range from kill and guard and the like, to more complex guard and patrol protocols. A protocol is a combination of behavioral patterns, which the Cybermastiff follows according to the present situation. In other words, I don't have to control Glato all the time. He can adjust and react to the circumstances on his own.
I see. Can I, just out of curiosity, can I give him commands as well? Like, Glato, get down. The Cybermastiff yawns, casually bearing a terrifying arsenal of razor-like teeth.
That is a useless command, Rogue Trader. A Cybermastiff must always be in an advantageous position to attack the enemy. Glato can crawl or move stealthily if the situation calls for it, but regardless, he will not respond to someone else's order.
Understood. I'll keep that in mind.
As you wish.
This is a bit of a delicate question, but is he still a dog in there? Like, this isn't just a glorified servitor, is it? I've got kind of a thing about that.
Generally, Cybermastiffs have all aspects of their animal nature removed, but Glato is a special case. His submodel takes a dog's loyalty and instincts as a hunter and guard, and renders them absolute. He is neither a dog nor a servitor. He is something much more. A Cybermastiff, a living weapon in service of the law.
Okay. Good. I guess. You cannot shake the feeling that your question has offended Solomorn somehow. There is a certain vehemence in the way he describes Glato's outstanding qualities. Alright, Solo, I think we can drop the pretense. Look, I appreciate the desire to put up a constant, restrained and disciplined front, but as one animal lover to another, I get it.
Glato is not a pet. He is an instrument of justice, as am I.
Well, sure, but that doesn't mean the two of you can't be friends. I mean, Cece over there is just a glorified status symbol. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't burn the entire expanse if something ever happened to her. We're more than just our roles, Proctor, you and me both. It's all right to admit that you might actually be, at least, a little human.
Impossible. You found me out? Yes, I am 1/100% less indifferent than I let on.
Solomorn raises an eyebrow. Hey, it's a start. So I guess Glato only responds to your commands?
Correct. Both his training and his augmetics ensure that Glato only accepts orders from me or from my superior officers. Apart from having the obvious benefits, it also serves to prevent disarray on missions involving multiple Cybermastiff handlers.
That does make sense. Solomorn says nothing, his attention focused on his dog. Hey, well, I am glad to have you. I'm sorry about your squad. They seemed like good men.
I've never been a part of a rogue trader's escort before. That said, I adapt to change more quickly than you might think, and as long as Glato is with me, I can handle any transition.
Solomorn glances around the bridge. So how about you, Glato? What do you think about all this? The Cybermastiff pricks up his ears, examining you with an intelligent look that seems anything but bestial. Well said, my friend. I'm glad to have you in my retinue as well.
I must remind you that Glato is a living weapon. If you like the number of fingers you have, do not touch the dog.
But you also said he's very well trained, so you could perhaps order him to not bite my fingers off? Solomorn gives you a long stare.
No.
Solomorn, buddy, I feel like we were getting off on a pretty good foot here. You don't want to spoil that, do you? I feel like this is a pretty basic request.
If I had a throne for every time I turned down a plea, I would have enough to buy your flagship. For your own preservation, drop this idea of yours.
He rubs the bridge of his nose. And if I were to order you in my capacity as a rogue trader?
You demand that I violate not the protocol of cybermastiff handling, but the principles of the Adeptus Arbites themselves. Those principles state that Glato is a weapon, and arbitrators never use their weapons for the amusement of noble persons.
I'm gonna bet him. I think it's more his choice than it is yours anyway.
I am sure a rogue trader can afford the best implants.
That I can. Honestly, it would probably make me match my character portrait better anyway. You carefully bring an open hand closer to the Cybermastiff's face and wait for his reaction. Glato's dark eyes are watching you, a crimson spark smoldering within. At last, you touch the back of his neck and start stroking his rough fur, your fingers brushing against the cold edges of the dog's augmetics.
Have you decided to make an exception for the Emperor's anointed Glato? Fine. Congratulations on your achievement, rogue trader. Glato has never allowed anyone to do that before.
I see no achievement. Glato puts his ears down under his master's gaze. Well, regardless of his reason, I do appreciate that he's such a good boy. Here you go, Glato. I think I've got some, yeah, here we go. Considerate payment for going above and beyond. Glato looks at the treat with indifference. Hey, there we go. Game of the year, 10 out of 10.
Glato is not a house pet, rogue trader. Trying to feed him will get you nowhere. He only eats out of my hands, and only at specific times. Strict training. It protects the Cybermastiff against deliberate poisoning and other ill intents. Basically, don't waste your time or your meat.
Fair enough, I'll keep my meat to myself, with a few notable exceptions. So tell me, being such a dogged servant of the Emperor and all, does Glato ever get any downtime? Are there things that he gets to do that he seems to genuinely enjoy?
Sometimes I let him play with heretics' corpses. That was a joke. If you're asking about entertainment, that concept does not really apply to an Arbite's dog. But I like to imagine that Glato is enthusiastic about training with me, that he enjoys running long distances at my side, and during target practice, he always seems eager to hear me give the attack order.
I mean, there's got to be more to it than that. You two are obviously very close.
Fine. Let me satisfy your curiosity. I do have a special exercise that helps to sharpen Glato's hunting instincts. I take a few ammo casings and hide them in hard-to-reach places. One time, after a raid on a manufactorum, I gave him a whole abandoned workshop to run around in, but I also played a trick on him by throwing one casing onto a ceiling beam. Then it was Glato's turn to play tricks. He waited under the beam until I walked up to him. Then he jumped onto my shoulders and climbed to the top. He cut my temple open with his claw and almost broke my clavicle, but he got the casing.
Well, hey, if it's any consolation, you're far from the first person to get a little roughed up when caught cheating at a shell game. That is pretty cute, though. I mean, we don't have a dedicated dog park or anything on board, but I could see about perhaps repurposing one of our less used sections into some sort of training grounds, perhaps? I feel like we'd all benefit from that.
The equipment needs to be sturdy. Glato is unstoppable when he's not holding back. Thank you.
The corners of Solomon's mouth curl upward. You're very welcome. You as well, Glato. The Cyber Mastiff growls quietly. It seems he does not take kindly to anyone making eye contact with him for more than a second. You know what? That's fair. CC's got a very similar rule. Alright, Solo. Glato, I'll leave you 2B. I'll let you know once we're headed back to Dargonis.
You know where to find me, Rogue Trader.
I do indeed. And you know what? Since we're already here, Cassie, a word about our new companions.
Lord Captain, your ship sports a multitude of peculiar colors. It is most exhausting.
The Lady Navigator jerks her chin up. Her weary gaze passes over the faces of everyone present, without resting on any of them. Well, this is new. Yeah, we should probably start working her thing into our itinerary, too. But, you know, while we're on the subject, we have had a lot of new faces in recently. Any thoughts you'd like to share?
Reading Xenos' colors has always been a grueling challenge for me. The boundless palette of colors Elliot emanates is too painful to look at. Her hues are bright, blinding, unnatural, and very, very dangerous, Lord Captain. I would never entrust my safety to a being that screams so loudly and clearly of its alienness to human perception.
Sure.
I regret that I failed to see Elliot's designs through the prism of my own powers, Lord Captain. But now, I think I'm beginning to understand the Xenos' intentions a little better. Their lies, their fear, their fury. Now Elliot's colors are woven together in my eyes into a single, garish tapestry of alien emotions. And though its shining makes my eyes bleed, I see the way Elliot dissolves into the whiteness of grief every time she speaks of home. And the way crimson flashes electrify the air every time her betrayal is mentioned. Jai continues to envelop herself in the variegation of her habitual masks, changing her colors at will like so many garments. But deep within her heart trembles a timid seedling the color of smoky lilies. It is grimy, burnt, and covered in ash. But it is genuine. Who knows? Perhaps one day Jai will allow it to grow and blossom.
I'm gonna say probably not.
The fire of a rising sun illuminates Ulfar's face. A blaze so incandescent, it is painful to look at. But whenever the fire subsides, even for a second, at once an undercoat of dismal grayness and repulsive green haze envelops his shoulders. No one around him notices it. But I see.
Cassia waves her hand, throwing an invisible shawl off her own shoulders. Well, no surprise there. We already know Ulfar's struggling with some deep-seated self-loathing. likely related to his occasional lapse of self-control. Probably hurt a member of his own pack or something. He's hinted at it on more than one occasion, most recently in the bath. He mentioned it was one of his worst fears, being turned against his own. But I imagine we'll find out more about it once we track down the rest of his squad.
The colorful shards of stained glass have risen up and enveloped Magos Haneman in a swirl of speculations. The silvery glint of metal no longer conceals his anxiety, nor does his scarlet robe conceal his doubts. Behind the cobalt steel of his thoughts, behind the cold, faded gray of his emotions, an ember, the color of amber, glows in Master Van Kalox's soul. So bright and warm, one is tempted to touch it. It is sad that the interrogator seeks to drown it with his own hands in the bottomless blue of duty. Sad indeed, but I can relate.
Cassia looks into the distance, transfixed, as though it weren't you standing in front of her. Then she snaps out of it and lowers her eyes. Yep, I get that.
Cubella is bathed in crimson as bright as fresh blood, and its sight is all the more striking in the embrace of impenetrable darkness. And yet, there is no malice in these heavy shadows. They are impartial, morose, uncompromising, and ever consuming what weak flashes of other colors there may appear.
Yes, she is very driven.
Master Anthar is enveloped in dense gold, but like the sun on an ice world, its radiance offers no warmth, only the steely sheen of immovability. Sometimes I see flashes of another color. It is as if the metal carapace were only a screen, but deep down inside, scarlet fire rages.
Right. So pretty much what we saw in talking to him. Deeply repressed rage. Buried beneath the rest of his front of discipline and duty. It does make me dread what might happen if some ill fate were to ever befall Glado. You can only keep things repressed for so long before the cracks start to appear. And separating him from his obvious emotional support animal would definitely be a way to hasten that process. I imagine his whole personal quest will likely revolve around finding the source of that rage and then choosing to either stoke or extinguish it. Likely related to his parents. The fate of his murdered father. The fate of his dead, quote-unquote, mother. All the more reason, I suppose, to hasten back to Dargonis. That'll obviously be our next stop. Thank you, Cassia. Excellent insight as always. You've given me a lot to think about. Get some rest. We'll take care of your thing soon. My main concern, of course, being that her thing seems to be tangled up right in the middle of 3 or 4 other things.
I have enjoyed your company. Thank you for the conversation.
Likewise. All right, well, we've got a long trip back to Dargonis, so might as well relax while we've got the chance. Hey, Cece. How you doing, sweetheart? All right, we're already running long, but let's push for one more thing. The soothing water caresses your senses. The tension slowly retreats. Troubles melt away. But soon your thoughts turn towards other things, such as getting to know your new companion even better. After all, he did suggest a proper debriefing, did he not? Master of Ablutions, send for my newest companion. Yeah, that seems about right. So, unwind is not a code word, and you are not in any danger? Solomon looks around the bath chamber in faint bewilderment. So you truly want to know how arbitrators spend their time off duty? Well, why not? I suggest a little shooting contest. We'll use empty bottles as targets. I mean, spreading shattered glass all over my bathroom wouldn't have been my first choice, but, sure, why not? Kibbles tried to drown me, so, you know, we all relax in our own ways. The enforcers hasten to carry out your order, and within seconds are setting out the bottles that will serve as your targets, and deferentially placing a firearm into your waiting hands. Let's keep it simple. 3 rounds, 3 shots. Whoever's the better shot wins. You go first. 3 shots might not be enough. What if we both make every shot? I don't think either of us would be satisfied with a tie. We'll do it this way. If it's a draw after 2 rounds, if you land the 3rd shot, the victory is yours. In Calixi, we call this the attacker's advantage. A good way of teaching arbitrators that if you get the chance to shoot first, you must hit the target. Yeah, I guess that works. But you know, we're also shooting under pretty optimal conditions here. Short range, immobile targets. Why don't we make it a bit more interesting? A shot before shots. The shot lands exactly on target, and the enforcers applaud discreetly. Oh, well, I did not expect him to go along with it. Solomon drains his glass in turn. Not a bad idea. It will simulate a mild concussion and bring us closer to combat conditions. The proctor raises his weapon, and the bottle shatters. Well played. How about with our eyes closed? You know, to simulate low or no light conditions. Why not? Visibility in combat is usually far from ideal. The proctor closes his eyes and waits for his turn to shoot. You know what? I leave it to the fates. I'll play this one straight. Let the dice fall where they may. Hey, hey! The target explodes, showering the room with broken glass. Oh, come on now. Solomon makes a gesture toward the target, and Glado makes a lightning-fast leap. The bottle shatters in the Cybermastiff's powerful jaws. Alright, Solo, buddy, I applaud the ingenuity, but I feel like we might be losing sight of what actually constitutes target shooting here. You think so? Glado is my weapon, which means I can use him. Solomon's face is expressionless, but his voice sounds slightly smug. Oh, is that so? Well, gosh, I guess someone should go grab my shotgun for me, because, yeah, I usually carry that as a backup, too. But you know what? I don't need it. The target shatters. Your guards immediately roar in delight, and Solomon bows his head respectfully. A glittering victory, Rogue Trader. It has been my honor to compete with you. Likewise, bud. Glado? And you know what? I think I'm done sitting in the bath because I'm pretty sure it's full of broken glass. Oh, that's Solomorn's loadout. Okie dokie. Not quite what I was expecting, but as always, a fun little hello there, Glado. Hey, buddy, what's up? I feel like, all right, well, you know what? Feel free to have run of the facilities. Just mind the broken glass. I'm gonna love it if he's just like a permanent guest there now, because they forgot to phase him out after the sequence. Honestly, I wish Cece would just hang around in my room sometimes too. Curl up at the foot of the bed. Chew on my trophies. You know, cat stuff. Space cat stuff. Alright, well, we're over the hour mark, so this does feel like a good place to call it. As expected, definitely a chattier episode, but I feel like we touched on some pretty interesting, fun, and narratively important stuff, especially where our new companion is concerned. Though Cass did provide some bonus insight into a few of our other companions, which is also always welcome. That said, we'll hit the pause button for now. I'll take care of the usual off-screen bookkeeping. I've got a fair bit of trading to do with Danrock, some inventory management. As aforementioned, I do need to do a very brief respec on Solo, just to make sure he can use the secrets of the Forerunner. And yeah, we'll pick up here next time, as we set our sights back on Dargonis, to see what sort of martial might be called for. See you then. Oh, and special thanks to the Raiders, the fine folks who help make these videos possible, including but not limited to Eerie V23, Revenant, Alois, Bowman, Drakiith, EgonAlter, Exsellsior, Gottlieb, James Trimmier, Kazorm, Lady Shayna, Mark Giemza, Nathan Welch Jr., OverlordPherom, RandomPassrby, RobbyB, Tomasz Piątkowski, Triphoppenskip, and Valinrook. Thanks for your support, guys. That said, if you'd also like to help support the channel, then feel free to push the buttons that do the things. Trust me, it does make a difference. Or you could even check out the PayPal, the Patreon, the Nexus GG, or the YouTube memberships. Links are in the description.
Testing me, are you? That is fine by me.